1 Samuel chapter 2. There's no singing this week, sorry. I know we had the Song of Praise last week. Unless Eli turned it into a musical when he yelled at his kids, in which case that could be some singing, but I'll let you read it as a musical at home. Congratulations. Now, I hope you enjoyed all that happy, happy, joy, joy, praise of God from last week, because you know how humanity's kind of a mixed bag? A little bit of good, a little bit of bad, a little sin, a little righteousness here and there. Yeah, that's kind of this little section of chapter 2, all thrown into one. Doesn't that sound exciting? So there is some good stuff. There's plenty of bad stuff. A couple of warnings ahead of time. We're going to try to make sure we don't miss the compares and the contrasts that are going on here and why they matter. And what I mean by that is we're going to talk about 4 kids, if we get this right. One will probably, it'll get in there as we make sense of this. The other warning is, if I've got this planned in my head correctly, no promises, there might be a lengthy exit ramp. I'll be trying to watch my time to make sure it's not too lengthy, so you have been warned on that. But I promise you, if nothing else, we will get through all of this. Sound good? All right, let's dive into verse 12. Now the sons of Eli were worthless men. Well, tell us how you really feel. I should love when the Bible just, rips the Band-Aid off. These guys over here, they're awful. Don't listen to them. Now, this is important, though, because anytime you see something like this in the Old Testament, this should not be the place where you go, get them. I get the sentiment. I'm the smiting guy. I'm with you here. But remember, as you go out into the world, when you see something like this, what's the charge? The charge should be things like James 5. My brethren, if any among you strays from the truth and one turns him back, let him know that he who turns a sinner from the error of his ways will save his soul from death and will cover a multitude of sins. Now, real quick, what's step 1 in that process? Actually making sure you point out what the sin is. Now, that would mean that the preamble to that step is what? Actually understanding what is sin and what is not. But we're going to assume you good Bible-believing, Bible-reading, spending time in prayer Christian people understand that part, which means when you see sin and iniquity in the world around you, you have to actually do what? Say something about it. This isn't optional. This is... And I get the temptation. The temptation in the modern world is just put your head down, go along, let the pagans do their paganism, and then, deal with it at the end. We're not promised that, but they're going to be mad at me. They're not going to like me. They're going to persecute me. Welcome to the planet. That's the warning from the very beginning. That's how this game is played. You have a higher kingdom. You have a higher calling. You have a higher authority. Be obedient to that and not to the things of this world. You have been warned. Now, keep that in the back of your head. We may come back to that idea later on. So, this is the problem with the sons. They are worthless men. This is where we're going to skip verses because some of these verse breaks are so bad. They did not know the Lord and the custom of the priests with the people. So that goes into verse 13. So this is a big, big problem. So they don't know the Lord. Things like Proverbs 1 would be an issue here. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And they don't know the custom of the priests with the people. Now, why wouldn't they know this? Didn't they write this down? And the answer is yes. They did. They kept it at the tabernacle where Dad works, where they work, which means in order to not know it, they had to not read it, or read it and just not care about it. None of those are good for the priests that are supposed to be doing ministry on behalf of God for the people. What would that create? You give someone no connection to God, no fear of God, no worry about the judgment that is to come, but they get to maintain earthly status and worldly prestige. What might that create in a human being? They have power, they have authority, and they think they are the end-all, be-all. Romans chapter 3. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their paths, and the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now, this is where it gets bad. Because it's bad enough to just not know the custom of the priests with the people. They give an example. When any man was offering a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come while the meat was boiling with a 3-pronged fork in his hand. Then he would thrust it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot. All that the fork brought up, the priest would take for himself. Thus they did in Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. Also, before they burned the fat, the priest's servant would come and say to the man who was sacrificing, "Give the priest meat for roasting, as he will not take boiled meat from you, only raw." And if the man said to him, "They must surely burn the fat first, and then take as much as you desire," then he would say, "No, you shall give it to me now, and if not, I will take it by force." And you're going, okay, dude, don't you have a grocer somewhere? And the answer is they don't need one, or at least they shouldn't need one. The priests are provided for. Deuteronomy 18. This shall be the priest's due from the people, from those who offer a sacrifice, either an ox or a sheep, of which they shall give to the priest the shoulder and the 2 cheeks and the stomach. Yum. You shall give him the first fruits of your grain, your new wine, your oil, and the first shearing of your sheep. For the Lord your God has chosen him and his sons from all your tribes to stand and serve in the name of the Lord forever. So, this is more than just mistreatment and not knowing any better. This is outright rebellion against God and a borderline mafia shakedown. I mean, it's a nice sacrifice you have there. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it, you know? It's like, seriously, dude. Now, what's the issue? This is why you should read Leviticus periodically. See, they're supposed to offer the animal, and then you're supposed to burn the fat as a burnt offering before you do anything else with the animal. So to sit here and do the shakedown before that happens means you're actually interrupting the offering that is being given to God. When we say there's no fear of God before their eyes, like imagine you're the priest at the tabernacle. Like your dad has gone in and stood before the Holy of Holies with the glory of the Lord and sprinkled the blood on the altar. He's told you about it. He's taught you how to do it so that when he's gone, you can do this work because you're going to be high priest in Israel one day. And your answer is, but I'm hungry. Presence of God, judgment, mountain, thunder, lightning, tummy rumbles. Like this shouldn't be an argument, and yet here we are. I point that out because this isn't just a mistreatment of the people. Like, is this mistreating the people? Yes, but this is not just a mistreatment of the people. This is a profaning of the name, place, and work that God has done, is doing, and will do. Other than that, nailed it. Verse 17. Thus the sin of the young men was very great before the Lord, for the men despised the offering of the Lord. Now, okay, we got that. Why is that there? Like, why do you need to throw that little verse in there? This is called foreshadowing, keeping you in line with what's going on. What's been the problem in the time of the judges? God puts the people on the land. The people fall into idolatry. God sends judgment. The people go, oh, oops, we're sorry. God raises up a judge, delivers them from their enemies. Things are good for a minute and a half. The people fall into idolatry. God sends judgment. Rinse or wash, rinse, repeat. I always get that backwards, and I don't know why. I promise I do bathe. I do know how it works. You have to put the soap on before you rinse it off. I promise I understand that concept. I just can't say it. Now, and when I say repeat, they do that for 3 centuries. Yeah, it's like longer than we've been a country. They're just like, idolatry, God saves us. Ooh, idolatry. But God has saved us. Ooh, idolatry. It's like, seriously, people, because every generation just keeps doing what they want. And this is going to continue, so you can fast forward to things like 1 Samuel 8. The Lord said to Samuel, listen to the voice of the people in regard to all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me from being king over them. This has been the problem from humanity. Why did Eve eat the fruit? Because she saw that it was good for food and it was good to make one wise. With what kind of knowledge? Ye be like God. Why are they building a tower out in the plain? So that they would have a name to be remembered, as opposed to dispersing and extending God's dominion to the ends of the earth like they were supposed to. They tried to stay centrally located and extend their dominion down through the ages. Oops. Humanity's entire story in the Old Testament is a story of humanity rejecting what God has told them they should be doing, how God has told them they should be doing it, and having Fleetwood Mac theology where they go their own way. And I'll give it a second so you can all get that out of your heads. And now you're welcome. Verse 18. Now Samuel was ministering before the Lord as a boy wearing a linen ephod. Okay, why are you throwing this right here? Well, you've got Eli, his kids, worthless. By contrast, here is sweet, innocent, pure as the driven snow, Samuel. And this is the first contrast that's being drawn here. Now, what ephod? What in tarnation is an ephod? And again, I will, just so you know, I will vacillate back and forth depending on my mood in the moment. It is an ephod, it is an ephod, I don't care. Put the emphasis in which syllable you would prefer. Not going to argue with you. Sleeveless garment worn by the priests by the command of God. Where does God command such things? Exodus 28. They shall also make the ephod of gold, of blue and purple and scarlet material, fine twisted linen, the work of a skillful workman. It shall have 2 shoulder pieces joined to its 2 ends, that it may be joined. The skillful woven band which is on it shall be like its workmanship of the same material, of gold, of blue and purple and scarlet material, and fine twisted linen. We talked about this ages ago when we went through Exodus. You could not miss the priest if your life depended on it. Dude was every color of the rainbow, like jewel encrusted. I was about to make a joke, and I'm going to behave myself. I'm so going to behave myself. Every once in a while, it's good. We should try it. So, you couldn't miss him. He's there. This is what God has commanded. Samuel is wearing not that ephod, but like a little linen one. So he's just got like a junior priest. It's like a little, like you sew the merit badges on for a Cub Scout type of thing. He's got that thing going on. Why? Well, because he's being trained by Eli as a priest. He's been given to God. Why? Well, because who's supposed to take over for Eli? Supposed to be Hophni and Phinehas. Now, let me rephrase this. Who's supposed to take over for Eli right now in this point in chapter 2? Samuel. This is how he's being presented. You've got those worthless men, enter in Samuel. How do we know this is the case? Well, this is why chapter 1 and 2 is there. This is why those connections to Judges and the barren woman, the wife of Manoah, the connection to Ruth, who did not have children over all those years, the connections to Rebecca and to Sarah, is the minute you see barren woman having no children, your brain should be going, oh, God's getting ready to do something. I've seen this story before. And for reasons. 1, so that God gets the credit, not according to human plan. But 2, so that as you read your Bible, as you see this story unfold, your brain should just be exploding with everything that has come before it, so that you keep the big picture in mind. You go, hey, this kid's got to be special. Otherwise, mom wouldn't have been barren this long and waiting and then seeing the faithfulness and the great praise song. This is vital. And again, I tell you this is why it's good to actually read your Bible and keep these ideas in mind. How are we getting to Christ from here? How are we getting to redemption from here? Because it allows you to see big picture stuff. Matthew 12. While Jesus was still speaking to the crowds, behold, his mother and brothers were standing outside, seeking to speak to him. Someone said to him, behold, your mother and your brothers are standing outside, seeking to speak to you. Jesus answered the one who was telling him and said, who is my mother and who are my brothers? Stretching out his hand toward his disciples, he said, behold, my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father who is in heaven, he is my brother and sister and mother. Now pause. Why would Jesus have such an idea and such an explanation? Enter Samuel. It's not Hophni and Phinehas. It's not the children of Eli. Why? Because they're worthless men. You can't make them high priests. Why would you do that when here you have believing child from a godly family who has been devoted to God from the beginning, set aside by God for God, and he's here? Why would you reject that just because they happen to be the ones who have been raised there a little longer than you have? And the answer is you wouldn't, and Jesus builds on this. So first little breadcrumb for this exit ramp we're going to be taking. I've said this before, and I'm going to try to make sure I define this rightly. You should have more in common with the believer on the other side of the world than you do with the pagan down the street. How? In that your life should be lived counter to the sinful world that is around you. Okay? That does not mean your culture looks exactly like theirs or your language looks exactly like theirs. It means the principles behind those things should be identical to theirs. And case in point, in this room, we have people that live different lives. You have different jobs, you have different hobbies, your lives look different. Some of you are dealing with children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Some of you are dealing with kids and in-laws and oh my. So what does that matter? Well, we should all be living the same life in that we are dedicating ourselves and devoting ourselves as living sacrifices to God in all things. So as you raise children, you raise them to the glory of God. As your children are out of your house and you're giving advice to grandchildren and great-grandchildren, you're doing that unto the glory of God, not according to the course and pattern of this world, but according to godliness. As you go to work unto the glory of God. If you're retired, you fill your time that you have been given unto the glory of God. So no matter who you are and what you're doing, you do all things unto his glory. That's what your life is supposed to look like. That is independent of language, age, culture, location. Okay? Always keep that in mind. And remember that because, again, what have I warned you? The world is going to try to take your values. Not so that you will abandon them, although they wouldn't be upset if you did, but so that they can twist them. Did God really say? Yeah, just that, So now you're going, ooh, and we've talked about this before with things like love and acceptance and tolerance. Don't you want to be tolerant? Well, yes, I do, but not like that. I don't want to tolerate that. Why? Because that's evil. And God tells me not to suffer that sort of thing. See, this is what the world tries to do in constant. Samuel's being presented as the contrast. We'll come back to this idea, I promise. Verse 19. His mother would make him a little robe and bring it to him from year to year when she would come up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice. And all God's people said, "Aw, isn't that cute?" You're picturing it right now. This little 4-year-old running around, a little robe that mom made him. I got to make him another one next year. He outgrew that one. Oh, he's so cute. Okay, now that we've got that out of the way. Sorry, but I know some of you read that and you pictured that and you were like, "Aw." Okay, verse 20. Then Eli would bless Elkanah and his wife and say, "May the Lord give you children from this woman in place of the one she dedicated to the Lord." And they went to their home. Anybody notice anything odd about that? Going back to chapter 1. Doesn't say the wife's name, which should be odd because what does Elkanah possess? What does he have? 2 wives. Yeah, look, where'd she go? She was right here. She was gone. Now, we made jokes about this last week. I will not pick on it this week, but why is she not mentioned? Well, I have no earthly idea. 1, she doesn't matter, though. 2, notice how the family dynamic is being presented as fixed. Why? Does that mean it's perfect and everything is good and nothing bad has ever happened? No, but it's being presented as right because of what? The obedience of the people and the work of God. It's a picture of things moving forward. Does everything in your world work perfectly? No. Does everything in your life pure as the driven snow and righteous until Jesus comes back? But is it? And the answer is, as you live as a sacrifice, as you live repenting of sin and trusting in Christ, the answer is yes, you are clean and righteous in his sight. I know it doesn't feel like that on most random days, but that's who you are in Christ. This is a picture of that. And by the way, this would be in addition to the usual prayer, which would be something that you'd want to know also. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. Which I would want all of that. And you'd hope for this as well, because you want the blessings of God on this family's life. Why? Because this family has been obedient in what kind of situations? Like, I always point this out. We've pointed this out on Wednesdays when we went through this. If you were going to pick a time, okay, we're giving you the time. You're starting over. You're going to extend the dominion of God into the ends of the earth to be fruitful and multiply. Which Bible chapter do you want to be in? Old Testament only. I want to be in Genesis 1. I want to be in Genesis 1 and 2, because that's when everything is good. That's when it's the best. Everything from that point forward is beginning the downhill slide. Part of the picture that you have in Genesis is that God's work accomplishes in spite of the sin of humanity. So Adam and Eve have everything perfect, and they mess it up. The next best time to do everything would have been who? Noah coming off the boat, because everything is what? Everything is new, everything is cleansed, sin is destroyed, it's just you and the family, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Oops. Yeah, crash and burn once again. And then you get Abraham in the midst of the pagan nations, in the midst of sin expanding to the ends of the earth. And we can't do this, and we can't accomplish this, but God is still working, and God is being faithful. And each one of his kids is seemingly, well, each one of his family line is seemingly worse than the ones that have come before. Now you fast forwarded a few generations, and the judges are an awful time to live in. And this family is an awful family to be a part of, with infighting and bitterness in the family with multiple wives, because who could have foreseen that going sideways? And yet, here's where God works. Here's where God moves. Here's where he sets aside a child for the accomplishment of his plans and his purposes. Where does God work, and amongst which type of people? People that are trusting him, in spite of the world around them, in spite of the sin which so easily entangles. This is not a message in the Old Testament of, would you people clean this place up so I can get something done around here? This is a, you people can't clean anything up. Watch what happens next. As God is praised, as God accomplishes. Now, Christian, you go out into this darkened world around you and go, stop that. God works amongst his people for the building up of his kingdom. Some of that is the adding to the kingdom. Some of that is the strengthening of the people in the kingdom. So, why do I encourage you that you see sin, you have to call it out? Well, it's going to make my life complicated. Yup. Welcome to sanctification. I know it's what you signed up for. Isn't everybody happy now? And all God's people said no. Now, why do I point that out, though? Well, they didn't listen. They didn't repent. They didn't become believers. I didn't add to the kingdom. I'm a failure. Stop that. Were you faithful? Do you still trust in God? Has your faith been strengthened? Has your hope been built up? Has your perseverance been proved? Congratulations, you're a stronger Christian today than you were before. The kingdom has been strengthened. The kingdom has been built up. This is good for you. This is good for the kingdom. This is good for the fellow believers that you worship with week in and week out. This is good for the other people that you disciple day in and day out. This is good for everyone that is in your orbit, because you have progressed just a little bit farther along towards the kingdom. Welcome to the kingdom being built up. This is why I tell you wisdom is so important. Joke about all those gray hairs that we're getting more and more year by year. I blame the kids and my wife, but you know how that goes. Why are they important? How many times have you learned a painful lesson at like 26 so that you could impart that wisdom to someone at 28? It doesn't work that way, does it? You learned that lesson at 26. When do you get to impart that wisdom to somebody? If you're lucky to remember it when you're 66. You sat there and I'm like, oh, wait, I've seen that before. Don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. Sometimes it's your kid, sometimes it's your friend's kid, sometimes it's your friends. And you're like, and you're like, wow, I learned those lessons all those decades ago for the building up of the kingdom now. It's almost like it's a cumulative process, because it is. And this is important to remember, that God is building up his kingdom amongst his people. You are not a success or a failure by any earthly measure. You are a success in a heavenly measure. Are you being strengthened? Are you being built up? Are you Are you growing in hope, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control? I think I added one in there, but it's okay. You should have that one too. I'm trying to think of. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Verse 21. The Lord visited Hannah, and she conceived and gave birth to 3 sons and 2 daughters. Okay, why? Now, warning. Do not go driving into the ditch with Job's friends, because that's the temptation right here. See, she was faithful and she persevered and she gave up Samuel like she was supposed to, so God gave her more kids. Stop it. He's God, not Santa, okay? He doesn't give you goodies because you were good, all right? That's not how this game is played. And by the way, that's the actual ditch of the friends of Job, Job 7. Remember now, whoever perished being innocent? Where were the upright destroyed? According to what I have seen, those who plow iniquity and those who sow trouble harvest it. By the breath of God they perish, and by the blast of his anger they come to an end. The roaring of the lion, the voice of the fierce lion, the teeth of the young lions are broken. The lion perishes for lack of prey, and the whelps of the lioness are scattered. Job's friends are looking at him and basically saying, look at you, man. What did you do? Because it must have been terrible for this to have happened to you. Now stop, Christian. What's the reasoning behind all that you do? And I'll give you an answer. It's found in Psalm 37. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light and your judgment as the noonday. Now stop. Because don't fall into the ditch right there. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart, which means if I'm righteous and godly, God will give me what I want. Well, yeah, because you're delighting yourself in the Lord. What do you want? I want more of sanctification and more of godliness and more of his kingdom. What will he give you? There you go. How will you get it? Through perseverance and trial. It's like praying for patience. Go team. But this is the world we're told that we live in, because it's the world that we do live in. I mean, I've joked about this before. See, it's bathing suit weather out today, right? It's so much warmer than it's been. I mean, the temperature's up like 40 degrees from 2 weeks ago. Go running around outside in your bathing suit when it's 45 degrees and windy, and what's going to happen to you? I can wish it to be July until Jesus comes back. What is it not outside? It's not July. So when I get the frostbite and my face falls off, who will have deserved that? Me, because I will have done that to myself. Instead, I have to live in the world the way that it is. Teaching my children this. Bring your coat until I tell you not to. Why? Because if something happens and the car breaks down on the side of the road, I would like you to not die while we wait for someone to come pick us up. See how that works? But the car is warm and the church is warm. Shut up and put your coat in the car. That's why there's sleeping bags. When it's 10 below, there's sleeping bags in the back of the car. Because if I pull over and fall off the road into a ditch, I'd like to not die before someone can come and get me. Go team. I'd like to think you don't want me to die until someone comes and gets me too, but I know how you people are. Matthew 5. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on the lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. Now pause. How does anybody know that Hannah has actually done that? That's why this is here. This isn't, oh, you were good, you can have more cookies. This is a confirmation to friends, neighbors, family, loved ones, and the tabernacle itself that the prayers to God have been answered, and that Hannah has done right according to the plan of God. Not according to what she has desired, not according to what she has wanted, but according to what God has laid down. This is part of that testimony, not just to Hannah, but to everyone else. You see things like this in John chapter 12. Jesus saying, my soul has become troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? But for this purpose I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice came out of heaven, saying, I have both glorified it and I will glorify it again. So the crowd of people who stood by and heard it were saying that it had thundered. Others were saying an angel has spoken to him. Jesus answered and said, this voice has not come for my sake, but for your sakes. See, when Jesus is praying to God, does he need confirmation that God hears him? No, he knows. He knows what the plan is, what's going on, and how this is going to end. The voice comes down not for Jesus to be comforted, but for the crowd to know who he is and why he's doing what he's doing. Welcome to, verse 21. I was reading the second line, it was messing me up. Welcome to verse 21. This is a confirmation that she has not acted in vanity, or she has not acted presumptuously, but she has acted according to what God has laid down and what God has planned. So the boy Samuel grew before the Lord. Sweet. Because of who? Don't fall into the ditch again. Is this because Elkanah and Hannah did such a good job of teaching him? Because Eli is such an awesome stepdad that because the people that he sees regularly are just encouraging his faith? Is that what is insulating Samuel and keeping him growing before the Lord? No. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade on your right hand. The sun will not smite you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will protect you from all evil. He will keep your soul. The Lord will guard your going out and your coming in from this time forth and forever. And remember, this is by picture. This is why the language is what it is. Things like Luke chapter 2. Jesus kept increasing in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and with men. Now, that's Samuel. Happy, happy, joy, joy, right? How are those worthless, no good sons doing? Verse 22. Now Eli was very old, and he heard all that his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who served at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Hold up. Time out. If you were like me, you read that and go, I am made of questions. Okay. 1, that's evil. 2, women? Where did they come from? Go back to Exodus 38. They made the laver of bronze with its base of bronze from the mirrors of the serving women who served at the door of the tent of meeting. Why are they there? I have no idea. No earthly idea. We talked about this when we went through Exodus 38. We said then, I have no idea. Now, in ancient cultic religions, it would not be unusual for there to be cult prostitutes there. I can't imagine that Exodus 38 would just throw out that there's some women there and they were engaging in that sort of behavior without going. And then Moses struck them down, because how that story would end in Exodus 38. Moses is still standing right there. He's got more tablets, remember. We can go get those if we need to. So odds are that's not why they're there. I don't know if they're there offering prayers. I don't know if they're cleaning up the place. Somebody's got to do the sweeping and the mopping. I have no earthly idea. I don't know if they just volunteered. I don't know why they have mirrors. But, they had mirrors. They took the mirrors and made the bronze laver. So these women, though, that whatever work they are doing has continued. And Eli's kids have looked and go, they're kind of cute. Now, you ever wondered why Eli was so quick to assume Hannah was drunk? This is what's going on at the tabernacle day in and day out. Can't imagine why he might assume somebody has nefarious motivations. Now, this gets actually worse. So read this again. Eli's very old. He heard all that his sons were doing to all Israel. That's the stuff we read earlier. And how they lay with the women who served at the doorway to the tent of meeting. Why is there a doorway? Do you remember? I'll help you out. You shall charge the sons of Israel that they bring you clear oil of beaten olives for the light, to make a lamp burn continually. In the tent of meeting, outside the veil, which is before the testimony, Aaron and his sons shall keep it in order from evening to morning before the Lord. It shall be a perpetual statute throughout their generations for the sons of Israel. So where the candelabra basically is, that they're lighting this oil, which is meant to symbolize the fact that God is continually hearing the prayers of Israel. That the oil and the oil is always being burned, the smoke is always going up, so that no matter where you are in the camp, there is smoke going up from the tabernacle, so that you know what? God is in heaven, our prayers are going up, he still loves us, we haven't been forsaken, go team, which humanity needs that kind of encouragement. That's right there at the door. That's where the women are. That's where this is occurring. I can't even give you a modern corollary. Be like, nope, I'm going to stop before I say something that would get me in trouble or give you bad ideas. Nope, not going to do it. Wouldn't be prudent. Now, second note, before you think okay, that's evil, but why light? Why is there so much light at the tabernacle? Why is everything being done? There's a candle for this, there's a candle for that. We're bringing lights in, we're lighting fires. John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and apart from him, nothing came into being that has come into being. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. See, if you're in that camp of Israel, if you go to worship at Shiloh and you camp outside the tabernacle somewhere, you know what's going on all the time? It's always lit up. It's always lit up. There's always a light burning or something being offered. It's always, the light doesn't go out. It's just constant. Why? Because the light of the world does not go out. It's a picture of hope for God's people in the work of God. And they've corrupted it just a wee bit. Quite a bit. So Eli said, verse 23, Eli said to them, "Why do you do such things? The evil things that I hear from all these people. No, my sons, the report is not good which I hear the Lord's people circulating. If one man sins against another, God will mediate for him. But if a man sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him?" I don't know about you. Like, if you twisted my arm, don't you want a little more from Eli there? Like, don't you want him to go grab the tablets out of the ark and like start whacking somebody? Like, this isn't a little bit evil. Don't you want him to catch him in the act and just start kicking him or something? Like, you want something a little bit more than boys. But in Eli's defense, what is his warning here? I think we can summarize it from things like Hebrews chapter 10. If we go on sinning willfully after receiving the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins, but a terrifying expectation of judgment and the fury of a fire which will consume the adversaries. In a nutshell, this is why Eli is not sterner. And I've said before, I am on the Eli apology tour, okay? Eli is not a good guy because, wait for it, in the Old Testament, guess how many good guys there are? None. They're all evil and wicked and sinful. So you can just throw that in there. But Eli gets thrown under the bus by every Bible commentator who ever talks about 1 Samuel as like the worst dad and the worst priest in human history, and his name should be like a byword until, the end. When the serpent is still crawling on his belly in eternity, his name is Eli. That's how he gets treated. And I sympathize here because this is a fairly stern warning. This is, boys, this is a sin against God. I am old and cannot beat you any longer, but God's going to if you keep this up. And if that doesn't scare you, I don't really know what would or should. Because if you've become so callous that there is no fear of God in any shape, form, or fashion, then really what can I do? I can proclaim mercy and grace and hope until, whenever. You've kind of decided, which means I just kind of have to turn you over and keep proclaiming and keep trusting and hoping that God eventually either comes down and whacks you or comes down and changes who you are and what you're doing, and be okay with either one. Now, the second half of this verse, "But they would not listen to the voice of their father, for the Lord desired to put them to death." Oh well. Which is the other reason why I'm not throwing Eli under the bus anymore. Because Eli could have begged, pleaded, kicked, beaten them with the stone tablets from the tabernacle, and what would it have accomplished? Nothing. Why not? Exodus chapter 9. "The Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not listen to them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses." John 9. "As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, 'Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he would be born blind?' Jesus answered, it was neither that this man sinned, nor his parents, but it was so that the works of God might be displayed in him." Welcome to why Hophni and Phinehas exist. Welcome to why God has raised up Samuel. Now, I warned you that we're going to have a bit of an exit ramp, and I'm going to put it right here real quick, simply because this kind of works for the discourse of your world, and it's not often that happens. You're seeing in 1 Samuel 2 in real time, I guess, the rejection of Eli's children in favor of Samuel. Now, does Eli love his children? Yes. Does Eli care about them? More than likely. Does he want bad things to happen to them? No. But At the end of the day, where does your final foundation have to rest? In God. Now, let's time out real quick. I mentioned earlier, you should have more in common with the Christian on the other side of the world than you should the pagan down the street. Culturally speaking, in your rejection of the things of this world and your acceptance of the things of God. If, however, the world tries to twist that from you, to take that idea and say that you should not care anything about the neighbor down the street, you should not care anything about the people that live in your household or the people that live next door in the next town, and you should abandon all of that for the people that we have decided are the most important, kick them. They have taken your values and they have tried to twist it. Your ministry starts where? It begins with who? You. And then moves where? To the people you have immediate impact with. This is how ministry has always and will always be done. I'll give you a historical example that we've talked about before. Roman Empire. You know the worst thing that ever happened to Christianity? Constantine. Constantine's like, oh, stop killing the Christians. And all the Christians went, thank you. And it was almost the worst thing that ever happened to us. Because within 50 years, we went from legal status to official religion of the empire. And then you know what we turned into? We turned into the same persecuting, mass-killing psychopaths that every other state religion has been throughout human history. And we joined with the state and we corrupted ourselves. Go team. The Christianity was spreading to the ends of the earth as a minority religion being persecuted. There are multiple stories from church history of executioners refusing to behead the Christian and instead taking his place. I can't throw that guy in the oil. Why not? Because he's a Christian and I am too. Whee! I mean, this is how it went, because it's an awfully powerful testimony to say, no, I reject all of your earthly power, all of your earthly influence, because God has changed who I am at the core, and I will follow him and not you. This has always been the case and always will be the case. You remove that, you try to do evangelism by fiat, you try to do discipleship by extension, failure, corruption, and distortion, because you've abandoned the means of common grace that God has given you. This is why I tell you, you live unto the glory of God. Where? Where are you? When? Now. The people you have influence with. So again, I always use kids as an example. Do you know why that is? Because I have 2 of them in my house. 20 years from now, you know who won't be using kid analogies? This guy, because they won't be in my house, I don't think. I mean, the way the world's going, be honest. Some of you are going, you know. But that's why I tell you, kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, siblings, parents, who do you talk to? Who do you have influence with? Who do you get to give advice to? You know, who loves you? And who do you love? This is where you start, and this is where your primary energies are supposed to be. When the world tries to take that impulse and twist it and say, no, you have to forsake that work to go do that work over here. Did God really say? And the answer is yes. Yes, he did. And this is what he said, and this is what it means, and this is how I live, and come here so I can kick you. That's always how that story should end, and I'm serious about that. Now, are there times when that natural affection and those natural circles get invaded upon and broken down because of the work of the gospel? Yes, what might that look like? It looks like 1 Samuel 2. Who do you think Eli wants to be the high priest after him? His kids. Hophni, Phinehas. Who's it going to be? Samuel. You know who's okay with that? This is why I give Eli some credit. We'll see this in either next week or next week after next. Eli is actually okay with that. God will judge sin, God will accomplish his purposes, and the name of God will be praised and his work will be accomplished, and go team. And that's Christian, how it's supposed to be, day in, day out, week in and week out, year in and year out. Following after the things of God, again, where you have influence. And notice this, Samuel's here through some odd circumstances. You think Eli, who actually has read his Old Testament and actually knows what is right, you think he's just blind and oblivious to that? And yet he's still doing what with his kids? Calling out sin, pointing them in the right direction, and warning them of the wrath that is to come. Christian, welcome to evangelism in a dark world. Looking at sin and going, that's sin, that's evil, God judges that, you may want to stop. Oh, keep going, have fun storming the castle. Guess how that's going to end for you? I mean, at some point, you have to trust who to accomplish his work? God. What might that look like? Verse 26. Now the boy Samuel was growing in stature and in favor, both with the Lord and with men. Welcome to your contrast. Here it is. Go back to the book of Psalms, Psalm 32. How blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven, whose sin is covered. How blessed is the man to whom the Lord does not impute iniquity, and in whose spirit there is no deceit. When I kept silent about my sin, my body wasted away through my groaning all the day long. For day and night your hand was heavy upon me. My vitality was drained away as with the fever heat of summer. I acknowledged my sin to you, and my iniquity I did not hide. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin. Therefore, let everyone who is godly pray to you in a time when you may be found. Surely in a flood of great waters they will not reach him. You are my hiding place. You preserve me from trouble. You surround me with the songs of deliverance. That's the hope, isn't it? That God will redeem, that God will strengthen. And if he hasn't, that God will judge. I've said this before, Christian, this is why judgment, redemption language, two sides of the same coin. Your hope is that God will redeem his people from their sin and that God will judge all sin. Those two things are not contradictory sentiments. They are where you live every day because you look out at the world and go, I want all that done. I want that gone, undone. I want righteousness to roll down like a river. But I'd like you to repent before it gets there. I would. And if you don't, keep rolling. Because that's what must be. Because that's who God is and what he does. And again, why is this here? By picture. You have a child sent by God for the work of God, growing in stature with men. Jesus kept increasing in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and with men. Those pictures are there for a reason. When you see these barren wombs, when you see these broken families, you should go, ooh, wait a minute, God's doing something. Because this is part of the reason why the line of the Messiah is what it is. Matthew makes mention, like you would never put women in your testimony in a legal document for proving your lineage. Matthew does. Which women does he put in there? He puts the best of the best. He puts Rahab the prostitute and Ruth the Moabitess, and he puts Tamar, who pretended to be a prostitute, to sleep with her father-in-law, and Bathsheba, who had the affair with David and lost her child. I mean, those are the women I want my daughter to be like when she grows up. Said no one ever. Like maybe the second half of Ruth, right? But do you want her to have to go down that road to get there? No. Why are they in the line of the Messiah? Well, God, you don't know what my family's like. God, you don't know how evil my family's been. You want to talk about evil family? Let's talk about evil family. You want to talk about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and you want to talk about David and Solomon, and you want to talk about the family lines that comes down and how broken humanity is. Jesus wins. His family's worse. Jerry Springer is like, no one would believe this if I put it on TV. They would laugh at me. Like, they wouldn't even be going, Jerry. They'd be like, this is ridiculous. No one is this wicked and sinful. That's why it's there. And yet, the work of God. Like in the midst of the wickedness of the time of the judges and the wickedness of the brokenness of family, of Eli's family and his evil sons, here is hope. Here's the work of God being presented, that the work will continue, that the sacrifices will move forward, that God will find his person. Now, Christian, go out into the world because that person has come. Samuel can offer sacrifice, but Samuel can't cleanse us. Christ can. Christ cleanses us from all unrighteousness and all sin. And as we repent of our sins and turn from them and trust in him and live for him in the world, not taking their arguments, not taking their definitions of what our faith is supposed to be, but trusting in him and his kingdom. Life may not go well in the here and now. Life may not be what we would like it to be, but it will be good in his sight because it is pleasing and upright in his kingdom, and that is better. Let's pray.